Notes is one of the important pieces of any aspirant's RBI Grade B prep, be it for getting your foundation right at the beginning of your preparation journey or for that ultra-quick revision just before your exam. With Oliveboard's latest launch Notes Plus, now you can highlight important sections seamlessly to focus on what really matters. Add personalized comments and refer back anytime. Use dark mode for maximum eye comfort during late-night study sessions. And yes, speed up your revisions with audio notes. Just listen and learn on the go. So why settle for any ordinary notes? Try Notes Plus on Oliveboard today. Top-notch content, next-gen interface.
Okay, thanks for joining. I know it's been a while since we did the last session, but we wanted to get a better view of how this year's schedule has panned out, what is in store for the next year, and give you those insights as you head towards the 2025 preparation. So thank you for joining, and I hope this session will be useful in fine-tuning your preparation. Do let us know if you have questions. You can type them in the chat box in between. At the end of the session, you can also ask questions if they have not been asked during the session. So let's get started. Today, we'll be covering four major things. I understand that a lot of you are either studying or in a college preparing for some competitive exams or already working somewhere, right? So naturally, the question is, how do you balance phase one and phase two preparation? Specifically for general awareness, what is it that you need to do in terms of how, whether it's for phase one, whether it's part of current affairs for phase two, how has the pattern changed over the years, and how do you now incorporate them in your preparation? The third is a deep dive into ESI and F&M. This is more for phase two. Although there'll be some questions in phase one. So how do we look at those questions? How do we prepare for both the subjective and objective portions? And how should your schedule for the next 6 months, right? How should it look like? How should you prepare? How do you have periodic check-ins? All of those things, right? And as always, at the end of the session, we have a giveaway. So don't miss that part. In the past, we've had very useful giveaways in terms of, the monthly compilations, previous year question papers, everything that helps you accelerate your preparation, not just from a time point of view, but also value or insights that you can draw from Oliveboard's material. Okay, let's get started. Next slide, please. Yeah, so let's look at what the timelines are going to be. Today, as we stand, it's likely that the notification is going to be out in 3-4 months. As we speak currently, we are expecting the results to be out in the next few days for 2024. So that will give us an indication of when the next cycle is going to begin. But we can expect sometime between May and June the notification to be out. From the time the notification is out, you will have roughly about 2 months before phase one. And then roughly a month between phase one and phase two, and immediately followed by interview. So the preparation for both phase one, phase two has to be completed before you go for phase one. If you're thinking that there's going to be time between phase one and phase two, unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of time. You will probably have 3 to 6 weeks, which is not enough to study, remember anything new. All you can do during that period is revise and then take mock tests, improve your answer writing skills, all of that. Okay. Again, this is a refresher slide for anyone who is unfamiliar with the pattern. Phase one has 4 sections. General awareness carries the highest weightage, 80 questions, 80 marks in 25 minutes. Reasoning, the second highest with 60 questions. Both English language and quantitative aptitude have 30 questions each. So total of 200. We'll go through the cutoffs and what the analysis from that shows us. But you have 200 questions in 120 minutes with sectional time limits for each of these sections. So it's a race against time, and therefore practice is of essence, right? Yes, next slide. So in phase two, you have three papers. The first is economic and social issues, which is for 100 marks, 50 marks of objective and 50 marks of subjective. You have 120 minutes, which is broken down into 30 minutes for the objective portion and 90 minutes for the descriptive portion. Like ESI, you have finance and management, which is again 100 marks, 50% objective, 50% subjective. So the 50 marks of subjective has 4 questions, 2 questions of 10 marks, 2 questions of 15 marks. And the 50-mark objective has 30 questions where you have 20 questions of 2 marks each and then 10 questions of 1 mark each, right? So the pattern for ESI and F&M is the same. Then you also have English descriptive, 400 marks, which contains essay, précis writing, and reading comprehension, right? Please remember that phase 1 score is not counted in your final selection. It is only for qualification. Phase 2 and interview score together get added and determine your final selection, right? If you remember, the first topic for today's webinar is on balancing phase 1 and phase 2 preparation, right? Now, why are we emphasizing that? Because even if you look at 2024, where there was a longer gap between phase 1 and phase 2, that was just about 5 weeks, right? And 5 weeks obviously is not sufficient for you to complete your phase 2 preparation. But given that you have about 3 to 4 months before phase 1, probably longer, maybe 6 months before phase 1, because we're expecting the notification to be out in 3 to 4 months. So this should be the time for you to complete both phase 1 and phase 2 preparation. For interview, you don't necessarily require additional preparation. It's mostly a question of your personality, a test of your aptitude, your awareness, and your fitment as a grade B RBI officer. So that is going to be a combination of what you already know about yourself, why you're motivated to write this exam, plus your preparation for phase 2, right? The only difference between phase 2 subjective portion and the interview is that in phase 2 subjective, you're going to write something. The questions are going to be similar. In an interview, it's going to be oral and it's going to be crisper, right? Next slide. Yes. So one thing that students often come up with, and this is a genuine problem, is if you keep studying one particular subject or particular topic for too long, there's monotony and then the attention span also wanes, right? So uske liye hame kya karna hai? We have to break it into 2 parts. So a lot of people also ask me, sir, should we do phase 1 first? Should we do phase 2 after that? This is not the optimal way to prepare for the exam. Ideally, you should combine both phase 1 and phase 2, which means if you're doing, let's say, phase 1 in the morning, you should do phase 2 in the afternoon, right? So try to do both simultaneously, right? And have different types of right sections or subjects that you are targeting, in the sense that if you are spending a lot of time, for example, in practicing reasoning or quant, right, try to balance it with something that is more theoretical, right? So for example, if you study ESI in the first half, then do quant or reasoning in the second half, right? So that will give you a good blend of improving your awareness, answer writing skills, right? Grip on a specific topic, as well as helping you with accuracy, speed, everything else that matters for phase 1, right? But one thing that is non-negotiable is that you have to be up to date with current affairs, which means that you have to do this on a daily basis, right? This is not something that you can just pick up 1 or 2 months before the exam and try to go through current affairs of previous months, right? It has to be done on a daily basis. So you have 2 options here. You can watch the daily lectures on Oliveboard. You can get the PDF, right? Or you can look at any other source that you are comfortable with and you can follow that. Please remember that because current affairs, general awareness is going to be vast, you have to limit your sources. And my advice is that for all subjects of phase 1 and phase 2, as far as possible, rely on Oliveboard. Next slide, please. Right. So this is just before we get into how to balance, right? I wanted to give you a perspective on what it takes to be successful in a competitive exam, especially something which aims for recruitment like the RBI, UPSC, any of these, right? So there are three key elements in preparation of these exams. Now, if you look at the pattern, the structure, and how they try to test the candidate's suitability, it's broadly on decision making, on awareness, on many topics, rather than going into depth in specific topics, right? Because this is a general recruitment, you have students who've done, let's say, sciences, who've done engineering, who've done arts, um, who could be CAs as well. So because you have students from different backgrounds and the recruitment is general, the nature of the exam itself is such that the idea is to have a broad sense of intelligence combined with decision making that gives the idea that somebody is fit for this role, right? Which means that you will be reading a lot of stuff in the course of this preparation. This cycle, as we just looked at in one of the previous slides, will go on at least for a year, which means that you will be reading about economics, about social issues, about financial issues, about multiple things. Now, whether you would have read it in your college or you would not have read it in your college, it doesn't make a difference. For the sake of this examination, the preparation varies, and hence you will be going through this multiple times, right? So in order to be successful, what are the three key elements? One, we need time for study or knowledge acquisition, right? And as I mentioned just before this, it does not matter if you have studied this or if you have not studied this, right? The idea is to give a level playing field, and the examiner will try to ensure that, right? If you have a particular background which can help you in some way, that is good. It gives you a bit of a head start. But if you don't have, there is nothing to be discouraged or disappointed about, right? So first is time for study. Given about 3 to 4 hours a day, that should be enough for you to ace this exam, no matter which background you come from, right? And whether you are working or whether you are studying, if you can consistently take out 3 to 4 hours in a day, that is enough, right? Remember, I said the word consistently, right? The reason is it's far more effective if you do, let's say, 3 hours a day across 7 days. So that is 21 hours, rather than doing, let's say, 10 hours on weekends and not doing anything during the week, right? Again, the simple reason being that you will be reading a lot of stuff. You'll have to remember a lot of stuff. If you don't do this regularly, the stuff that you read, the retention comes down drastically, right? And please remember that the brain remembers through repeated exposure, okay? So step one, we give enough time for ourselves to learn about all these new things, to read the newspaper, all of this. This, as I said, does not require more than 3 to 4 hours, right? Now, second, once you've read all of this, right, you should also take time to revise what you've read, right? For example, current affairs. You should revise on daily, weekly, and monthly basis, right? After revision, the third element is practice or taking mock tests, right? Now, this is where Oliveboard is helping you by providing those mock tests, right? Portal on their portal, right? Now, every week you have these mock tests, you have full length mock tests, you have topical tests, for phase one, for phase two, for the objective portion, for the subjective portion, everything is covered, right? So please remember that we should give enough time for ourselves to study, to revise, and to practice. And again, this need not be sequential. It's not that only after your complete syllabus is done, you start revising or you start, taking the mock test. You have to start doing things parallelly. Okay. Next slide, please. Right. Now, remember the second part of our agenda for today was also to look at how we can take specific goals, stick to them, and that will give us confidence our preparation is going, right? So what should be our first month's target for both phase one and phase two, right? The first thing is we should understand the syllabus well, right? And focus on strengthening our conceptual understanding for quant, reasoning, and English, right? The reason I say that is because all this is something that we would have read in school, right? But of course, the nature of the exam is different. So our preparation also will be slightly different. But if a simple reading of the material and practice on Oliveboard suffices, that is excellent. Even if that is not the case, Oliveboard has recordings of all these sessions. So you can go through that. If you have doubts, you can reach out to them. They'll help you clear and also get better understanding of quant, reasoning, and English, right? What I would suggest is in your daily timetable, you should spend about half an hour on taking one test or refreshing your concepts for QR, right? That should be your goal every day, right? Newspaper reading is something that you should do every day, irrespective of whether it's for phase one or phase two, and this will continue up to end of phase two for you, right? Of course, it'll also help in the interview, so not just up to end of phase two, even for interview, right? Again, why should we read the newspaper? And I see questions on which newspaper is the best. Any national newspaper is okay. You can read the Indian Express, the Hindu. You can read the Economic Times. You can read Drive Mint. It really does not matter which newspaper you read because the issues that all of them cover are the same. The opinions may vary, but we have that grasp on what is useful, what is not useful when we read a particular newspaper, and we can do that distillation ourselves, right? Why are we emphasizing so much on reading the newspaper? Again, this is because it does not just help in giving us that awareness or understanding of an issue. So if there's a 10-mark question, you're expected to write about 200, 300 words, we can do that. But it also helps us in structuring and presenting it in the right manner, which means that it's not enough if your answer contains all the necessary points. It also has to make for a coherent whole, right? So when the examiner reads the answer, he or she should think that you've covered all the elements, but in a neat manner. And that fetches you higher marks than simply writing bullet points saying that, okay, for example, there's a question on, let's say, climate change and sustainability, right? India has some of the highest, some of the worst polluted cities in the world. What should be done about it? And it's not just about writing 10 points, right? It's also about having the contextual understanding, right? Having actionable solutions, linking it with what the government has already done. Where has it been successful? Where has it not been successful? How do we make things that are not that successful more successful? All of that, right? So that is how you should approach the subjective portion, and newspaper reading helps you immensely there, right? For objective portion of current affairs or for ESI, I don't want you to spend time on reading the newspaper. As I said, Oliveboard, or there are other ways in which you can get that digest, and you can go through that properly. Okay. So in the first month, that is February, your goal should be that you are comfortable with quant, reasoning, and English, as well as you have the habit of reading the newspaper, and then you are able to attempt a few mock tests. Now, again, even if your preparation is going slow, you've just started, it doesn't matter. Get into the habit of taking the mock tests, writing them, so you understand how well you are able to manage time. Which areas are you comfortable with? Where do you think you otherwise were confident, and today you are not confident about when you take the exam? What are the things that you have not come across and that you need to now go back and brush up? So these are the utilities or advantages of taking those mock tests early on, right? And wherever you feel that just the overall section test or the full length mock test is not enough and you need to do at a topical level in order to gain confidence, then you should do that, right? I see a question in the chat box on what is the proper strategy to read the newspaper. I'll cover that when we move to the ESI section, right? Along with phase one, for phase two, right? Again, understanding of syllabus is critical. What I will suggest is in the RBI notification, there's usually a detailed section of all the topics of phase two, right? So the goal here should be that for each of those subtopics that are mentioned in the RBI notification, you have a ready answer for about 250 words, right? Typically, if you look at, let's say, whether it's ESI or F&M, you'll have about six topics, right? So if you have six topics and then each one has about 15 subtopics, for each of the subtopics, you have a ready reckoner. If there's a 10-mark question, you immediately know what to write. Okay. Then once you start preparing on the theoretical aspect, which is more for F&M, the static portion, ESI in general is largely dynamic. There is some conceptual and theoretical understanding that is required, but from your daily newspaper reading and other sources, you will get that anyway. So I don't think you should spend a lot of time on ESI static portion, but management is completely static. Finance is static heavy. There's also right current affairs portion, but it's also static heavy. So that's where you should spend time, right? And again, the trick here is every time you finish a chapter, do the test, right? Both the objective and subjective, right? Next slide, please. Okay. Now, in the second month, what I want you to do is pick areas, specific areas in quant, reasoning, and English that you're not comfortable with from your initial assessments, and focus on them to improve your confidence there. And that will also mean that you will attempt a lot more in your mock tests, right? Parallelly, you will also be doing the current affairs, as I said, on a daily basis. So by end of March, you should be able to cover December, January, February, March, all of these. And you'll also continue taking the full length mock test, right? Next slide, please. Yeah. So if you see now for month 3 as well, this is when we get closer to the exam. So we get into the examination mode, which is where you should have a cheat sheet of sorts where you put in all the formulae, the shortcuts, important concepts, all of those things. That'll help you revise before the exam in a quick manner, right? For phase 2, by this time, you should have completed F&M, right? And then you can start focusing on ESI. So roughly the static portion for both finance and management should take 1 month each, right? By end of March, you should be able to complete both of them. And then you can start revising as well as focusing on ESI, the current affairs portion, right? Next slide, please. Yeah. So if you look at how the progression has taken place so far, so 3 months should be enough for you to complete all the static portion, gain conceptual understanding for the other sections of the examination. So here is when you spend more time on practice, right? Now, again, just because I'm asking you to write an exam, a mock test, right? And you do that, it's not enough. Every exam that you write should be followed by an analysis. If you take an exam for half an hour, you should spend at least half an hour analyzing it, right? Which means that you should go back and look at every question, right? Every question, did I attempt this? Did I not attempt this? Why did I attempt it? Why did I not attempt it? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Why did I get it right? Why did I get it wrong? So the idea is you are focusing on areas that you know well, you are answering them and you're getting right. So your accuracy goes up because there is negative marking associated, right? हर साल ये सुनने में आता है कि students have cleared the overall cutoff, but they've not been able to clear some sectional cutoff by 0.25 marks, right? The difference from 0.25 comes because you've answered a question incorrectly, which you could have left and then you would have qualified, or which you could have answered correctly and then you would have qualified, right? So we should not be in a position where we lose out by those margins, right? Which means that every question that we are attempting, we know fully well why we are attempting that. And we are not just doing blind guesswork, right? Even if we have to guess for some of the questions, we do that after eliminating all except two choices, right? So that's when, month 4 onwards, that's when you start fine-tuning your strategy. So, okay, this is how I'm going to attempt questions in this section, right? For example, quant में, अगर quant में questions है, तो पहले I'll do arithmetic. Arithmetic is my area of strength. Or let's say I want to do permutations, combinations, probability first, right? Or I'll do data interpretation, data sufficiency questions first, right? So once you start taking more tests, you'll be able to analyze and understand what your key strengths are and then play accordingly, right? I'll always suggest that both in quant and reasoning, even for that matter, English, try to do the standalone questions first, because once you start looking at them, attempting them, getting them right, it will build your confidence, right? So any sets, puzzles, right, data interpretation, those kind of questions, ideally do them towards the latter half. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at what the distribution was across years for phase 1. Ignore what was before 2021 because there were no sectional time limits then. So what would happen was students would spend more time on solving questions in reasoning, in quant, other sections, and GA, all those were done fairly quickly, right? Because we have sectional limits, and 45 minutes for reasoning and 25 minutes for quant is going to be a tough task. The cutoffs have naturally come down. Something that also makes the cutoff move about, whether it's higher or lower, is the difficulty level of the exam itself. And that is something we have no control. So any speculation on what is the level of difficulty based on previous trends, can we understand anything? That is futile, right? Do not entertain such thoughts. Don't waste time in that discussion or even, having those right fantasies in your mind. Okay. What is doable in any case is that, as I said, we have two objectives for phase 1. One, we need to clear the overall cutoff. which you can see has been waverly in the last few years. But we also need to clear sectional cutoffs, which are going to be maximum of 20, 15, 7.5, 7.5, right? So our first objective should be that we are able to clear all the sectional cutoffs, and then we are able to clear the overall cutoff. Assume that overall cutoff is going to be about 1.5 to 1.7 times of your sectional cutoffs, right? So in fact, I've very rarely seen somebody who has cleared all the sectional cutoffs but has failed to clear the overall cutoff. But there are plenty of instances where people have cleared overall cutoffs but not cleared the sectional cutoffs, right? Is this clear? So if there is one thing you should change in your strategy, that is that in every section, how do I get to clear the sectional cutoff? If you do that, and then you are able to identify that of the 4 sections, ye do, whether it's general awareness and reasoning, whether it's general awareness and quant, whether it's reasoning and quant, these 2 sections are my areas of strength. I can score more than the sectional cutoff. You do that, then you will clear phase 1 and move to phase 2, right? So one thing is general awareness, there's a distinct change in the way questions are being asked. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah. The way in which questions are being asked, but the nature of difficulty has not really changed, right? So if you look at what type of questions are asked, and especially the last 3 years, out of 80 questions, more than 80% are from current affairs, and very few from static syllabus, right? Which is why we are emphasizing again that every day you need to read and revise your general awareness syllabus, right? This gives you a distinct advantage, not just in getting higher marks, but in getting there faster. What do I mean by that? In the last 2 years, what we noticed was that the questions in general awareness have become quite lengthy, especially when it comes to government schemes, right? Instead of asking just a one-liner and with simple options, the question is now taken a paragraph format, which means you have to read about 5-6 sentences, right? And there are also combinations of options given in the answer, not just about selecting one, right? Then it becomes multiple options, not multiple choice, right? But if you're thorough about it, then you can quickly identify and you can start eliminating the options, right? So that is the reason, not just that, you'll get to the answer, you'll get to the answer much faster than others, right? And as I've been saying that when you look at those long questions and it takes too much of a time, considering it's 80 questions and you have just 25 minutes, this gives you an advantage of at least 30 seconds in each question. And that means you are able to do 15, 20 questions more than others, right? Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is also a good representation of what the trend has been when it comes to different areas of current affairs. So if you look at whether it's government schemes, whether it's economics and current affairs and finance or RBI notifications, these usually form the largest chunk of the 66, 68, right, questions that we saw. So focus on these 3. These are overlapping as well, which is why do not try to break them into what you're seeing on the screen here, but focus on getting as much understanding as you can, because it's not just for phase 1. In phase 2, especially in the objective portion also, it can help you, right? So government schemes is a must do, right? And usually at least in phase 1, these are, while it could be a little tedious to go through and answer, these are doable, right? These are not very obscure ones that are asked, okay? Please pay heed to the notifications by RBI related to various departments, schemes, all of them. They will find a prominent place in both phase 1 and phase 2. But again, as I said, do not think of phase 1 and phase 2 separately. When you are studying, study both simultaneously, and that will help you, right? Next slide, please. Yeah. So if you look at the difficulty level, now again, you can see that the number of questions that form that are in the difficult category have increased, right? Now, this is also a bit deliberate that we've seen not just in general awareness, but across other sections as well, in terms of the change in style of questions that are asked, right? However, at least 65-70% of them are still in the easy to moderate buckets, which means that out of 80, you should be able to target a score of 40, right, in general awareness. Okay. Next slide, please. We discussed this, read the newspaper, follow Oliveboard's monthly magazine. Now, here is how you should use this monthly magazine, right? You have a daily PDF, you have a daily video lecture, you can attend that. Based on that, let's say Monday to Saturday, you are doing this. Sunday is when you don't read anything new, you revise whatever you read from Monday to Saturday. End of the month, now you look at Oliveboard's monthly magazine and then revise that, right? Once you're done with this cycle, then take the mock test for that month whenever it is available. Okay. You can also follow RBI grade B's alignment analysis by Oliveboard. So that will also help you in, especially if you're somebody who's working, you have to commute to the office. This is when you can utilize that time in order to keep up your preparation, right? Next slide, please. Yes. So we've discussed this previously. Government schemes are non-negotiable. They're critical in ensuring your success. And again, it's not just for phase 1, phase 2 interview. Everywhere these become relevant. PIB news, of course, is important. But again, you don't have to necessarily go to PIB website, scan through all the news items. Oliveboard is here to help you. You can watch Oliveboard's insights, analysis on latest, publications and their implications for you for the exam. Important reports from organizations like Niti Aayog, IMF, World Bank. So you can expect questions from this, not just in phase 1, for phase 2 as well. But again, it's not about going to that website, downloading the report, all of those things. Make use of Oliveboard material to the extent possible. Okay, next slide. Yeah, I've said this time and again, don't, look for multiple sources, identify one source and stick to that source. There's a question in terms of how to read the newspaper, right? So here is what I want you to do, okay? First thing is you have to be thorough with the syllabus, and especially the syllabus for phase 2, as I said. Download the detailed notification from the RBI, look at that, look at all the subtopics. Anytime you read a headline in the newspaper, you should immediately be able to link it to what is there in the syllabus. If you are not able to, then you should not read that article. Don't use the newspaper to get news out of it, right? Oliveboard is there to help you with that, right? What you need to use the newspaper for instead is to form opinions, and form opinions with rationale, with logic, with data, which means that you should spend time reading only the op-ed section, nothing else. And in the op-ed section, only those that are relevant to the exam, which means either it's an economic issue, it's a social issue, it's a financial issue, right? That's how you will spend time reading that, okay? Now, this what you should also do when you're reading the newspaper is, if it's an 800-word opinion piece, then after you've read it, try to summarize it in your own words in about 200 words, right? If it's an editorial, editorials are usually short, about 200 words, then try to summarize it in 50 words, right? That's how you will have better comprehension, and your answer writing will also improve, right? Last suggestion on what to do for general awareness. I've said this number of times today that you have to focus on the last 6 to 7 months, right, on current affairs, and largely even in that, focus on government schemes, reports, all of that, right? Multiple times you have to revise, which is daily, weekly, monthly, as I said. So, for example, if you're reading February 7th current affairs today, then you will revise February 7th current affairs tomorrow, right? And along with reading February 9th current affairs on February 10th, you will revise February 8th current affairs. Is this clear? So general awareness, you will revise on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Okay. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there's also a recent, initiative by Oliveboard on general awareness, right? They'll give you a comprehensive view across different exams, not just for RBI, and help you clear multiple exams, right, through this foundation. So if you are interested in that, then make sure you enroll for that batch. You'll have daily classes, you'll have daily PDFs, and you'll have monthly magazines, not just the current affairs, PIB compilation, all those, and you'll have support from experts. Okay, next slide. Yeah, now we look at phase two, right? Remember, as I said, phase one is only for qualification. So I don't want you to do a PhD. If the cutoff is 100, you're scoring 120, you're scoring 140, it doesn't matter. The cutoff is expected to be 100 and you're about 105, then that'll do the job, right? But phase two is different. Phase two score, in fact, determines your selection, and you can see that here, right? Why do I say that? Look at what the phase two cutoff was and what the overall cutoff was in 2023. So 169 out of 300, as I said, 100 units for each paper, and then interview is out of 75. So the overall cutoff was 229, which means that if somebody had scored just 60 in 169 in phase two, they had to score 60, which is usually the highest that you get in the interview, right? So scraping through, just getting across the finish line is not enough in phase two. You need to maintain a healthy buffer of at least 25-30 marks, right? Because interviews can be uncertain, right? Even if you think you've done well, the interviewer may feel that they did not get what they wanted. They may accord lower marks to you, right? There could be multiple things that could go wrong on that day. So therefore, make sure that you are getting to a score of at least 200 in phase two, right? Even if the paper were to be a little easier, if the competition were to be more fierce and the cutoffs were to be higher, you still have some leeway, right? Idea is you have a buffer of at least 20 to 30 marks. So even if the interview doesn't go as well as you wanted it to, you will still clear the cutoff and find your name in the final list, right? Yeah, so like ESI is where students also I've seen two types of syndromes. One, because they're doing this on a regular basis, they feel that they know a lot. They don't necessarily pay heed to the way the questions are asked, right? Or at the other end, they go too deep into each of these sections, into each governance scheme, all of that. They end up amassing a lot of information, but not entirely useful for the examination, right? So if we look at broadly what the syllabus is, growth and development, social structure, Indian economy, right? These are three key elements. No matter which area you see, whether it's subjective or objective, we know there are going to be some questions on expected lines. There are going to be some questions on unexpected lines, right? Next slide. Right. So just by looking at the objective trends, you know that government schemes will carry the highest weightage, right? No matter which year you look at, right? And this especially becomes tricky when you don't have just one question, you have series of 3-4 questions, paragraph on that, right? Which is why I keep saying that when it comes to government schemes, you should have a framework in mind. It's not enough knowing the superficial details, you have to know the specific details, right? So here you can use the 5 W's and H, which is who is the scheme meant for, right? What does it cover? When does it kick in? How does it seek to benefit the people it seeks to address, right? What is the allocation in most of these schemes? Either it's centrally sponsored, right? There is a distribution of the funds, right? Center will spend 60%, the states will spend 40%, right? Some bit of allocation, right? How long is it in vogue? When is it? Where does it happen? Is it only in targeted districts? Is it across India? Uh, is it catering to a specific segment of the society? So that's how you should have a framework. So what I would suggest here is if you can make just a Google sheet with these columns and these rows for each scheme, now you start entering these details, right? The trend has been that usually you will have 1 or 2 paragraph questions, which of relatively less known schemes, but they are linked to some other more popular scheme which is in the newspaper, right? So when you look at a scheme and by that ministry, you should look at all associated schemes, right? So for example, if it is Manrega, uh, we had a different version of Manrega, right? Before this. So what was that, right? Same thing, for example, say Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, any of the initiatives that government has. One of the recent ones is, let's say, PM Vishwakarma Yojana, right? So what is it that we did earlier for providing skill development and entrepreneurial support, right? For whether it's traditional industries, right? Artisanal, cottage industries. So that is how you should think about it. Second is reports and indices. Again, you can follow a template or framework where you have all of these major indices and the agency or body which provides that forecast or provides that data point, right? For example, GDP growth. Okay, what is the RBI saying? What is the government saying? What is IMF saying? What is World Bank saying, right? On poverty, on let's say the Human Development Index by the United Nations. So have all of these in one place so you can revise them multiple times, because this will definitely be asked in the exam. Now, which report, which index, for which year, we don't have control over that. But as long as we cover in sufficient breadth, we know that we are able to answer that in the exam, right? Obvious circulars are important both in ESI and F&M. Also for phase 1, as we saw, so that continues as it is. Again, the idea is not that you go to RBI website every day, look at what the press releases are, look at what the notifications are, but you keep an eye out for any new initiative that's been launched, right? And how do you know that? By going through your daily PDFs that Oliveboard circulates. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Specific ministries that you should keep an eye out for: education, social justice, women and child development. New schemes that are announced in the budget or where there's a significant change in outlay. Let's assume there's a scheme which was in vogue, but it had a budgetary outlay of 1,000 crores. This year, it's come to say 5,000 crores, right? Now, obviously, that's something to take note of, right? So that means the government's focus is on that particular scheme, or rather the outcome from that scheme, right? When we say ministries, it's not just that, again, you go to the website, you look at all the important ministries, but these are both from economic and social welfare point of view, these are important areas to be tackled, right? So the reference could be to something else. Even last year, that was the case in one of the descriptive questions that, okay, there's a report on gender diversity. It speaks about certain things. What do you think can be done? where are the shortcomings, right? So it will help you give in those answers, if you can weave in that these are schemes, this is what is happening at a policy level, this is what is happening at a societal level. That again will give the examiner that confidence that you are somebody who is well read, who's understood the question, who's articulated the answer well, and therefore you will get the highest marks. Next slide, please. Right. Again, ESI, as I said, both objective and descriptive, lot of it will come from your current affairs reading and your newspaper reading. So whenever you go through that, there's a term that you don't understand now, either use a textbook. Maybe it's Ramesh saying, look at Oliveboard material, or you can just use websites like Investopedia to understand what the concept is, right? Summarizing important articles, I mentioned that earlier. It's important for you not just from the descriptive portion, but also from in ESI, but also in English, right? You have essay, you have reading comprehension, you have précis. It will help your expression and your writing style much more. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to summarize what we discussed over the last 15 minutes, one, have clear conceptual understanding, enrich that conceptual understanding through examples, illustrations, data points, everything else that you get from newspapers on various issues. Use both of them in order to make short notes on what the issue is and how we should tackle it. Remember that when it comes to policy making, when it comes to policy, not just policy making and its implementation, it's never a case of black and white, right? There, all schemes have the right intentions. Some of them may be less successful, some of them may be more successful. So you have to bring about that contrast, right? Now, these are places in which it has worked. How do we make it more successful, right? As an officer at the RBI, you cannot be cynical, right? You have to also present, not just highlight a problem, but present a solution, right? So please remember that in every question that you attempt, especially if there is an opinion, right? You can argue for the topic, you can argue against the topic, that is your choice. No matter what you choose to do, you have to present a way in which things can be made better, right? So, for example, let's say there's a question on, okay, clean energy, sustainable energy or renewable energy. Is India meeting its targets? Why is India failed to meet its targets? All of these, right? Now, you can say that, okay, India had certain ambitions when it comes to, solar power, when it comes to wind power. This is our extent of achievement was 60%, 70%, all of these, right? Now highlight that this is where the problem happened, right? Power projects have been sanctioned, okay, but implementation has not happened. Why? Maybe there's a shortage of, let's say, the cells itself, right? Those solar panels, okay? So what is your solution for that, right? Will you bring down the import duty, or will you give more SOPs to the domestic production units to improve their capacity, right? Will you introduce a form of performance-linked incentive? So that is the way your answer should be crafted, right? That will only come about when you test yourself by writing more and more answers, right? Now, again, one thing that you can do is whenever you complete, as I said, a topic, go to Oliveboard portal, look at the previous year questions on both objective and subjective side. But from your newspaper reading, every week, I would expect that you'd be reading about 8 to 10 issues. Pick any 4 of them, write answers on your own, right? Write answers, now get them evaluated. That's important, right? There should be a feedback mechanism. It's not enough if you just write answers. Make sure somebody sees and gives you that right constructive feedback on which elements of the answer are good, which are the ones that need improvement, so that you know that by the time you get to the final exam, you have a clear structure, you have the necessary information, and then you can easily marry the two. Next slide, please. F&M, F&M, so management and finance have roughly 50% split if you see. Management is largely static. Again, as I said, look at the topics, look at the subtopics, look at the type of questions that were asked previous year. Because it is static, now this should be an area where you should score very highly, right? That means you should be able to target about 80%, right? So if there are, if management is for 24, 22 marks, you should be able to get to 20 of it, right? Finance static, again, this also has been relatively easy. Now, again, we don't know how the trend is going to be, but so far it's been relatively easy. So this is something, again, you should aim for about 70% in this. Current affairs obviously plays a large role, and your regular newspaper reading and your current affairs reading should help you there. So do not look at general awareness only from point of view of phase one. Look at current affairs that can help you with both phase one and phase two. Okay. Next slide, please. Next slide. I've said this often today. I'm repeating myself again. Stick to one source. Management otherwise is an extensive subject that requires detailed preparation. We are not here to do PhDs. We are here to clear the exam, right? Let's not have any doubts about what the objective is. The objective is to clear the exam, right? For that, as I said, focus more on breadth rather than depth. Therefore, use a single source and revise it multiple times. And Oliveboard should be good enough for most of your preparation, right? Instead of waiting to finish the entire syllabus, start taking mock tests. As I said, every time you complete one chapter or one subtopic, do the test, okay? And also for the subjective portion, for each subtopic that's mentioned, have a note of about 250 words ready, so that if there's a question that appears in the exam related to that, you readily have your answer. Next slide. Yeah, this is a good illustration of how to use mind maps for quick revision and for having that conceptual clarity, right? Can we zoom in a bit? This is on management theories. This is the first topic in management. But that again, this will help you in tying up everything together, because again, this is not a school essay where if somebody says, for example, this is a question about 2 years ago, write about Henry Fayol's 14 principles of management. You go and just, regurgitate all these, right? About division of work, about authority, responsibility, all of that. At least 85% of those who are writing phase two will be able to, easily reproduce this. But if you do that, you'll only get about 4 out of 10. You should provide a concise and a clear view of what influenced Fayol to propound his theory, what were the good aspects, what were the not so good aspects, right? Which means that who came before Fayol? It was Taylor, right? What inspiration did Fayol take from Taylor or from his own experience working at, a steel factory, right? After Fayol, what did we realize about some of his principles, right? That's how you should tie everything together, right? Remember that at this level, the examiner expects you to have a view of your own and to substantiate it with logic, with reasoning, okay? So just writing simple points is not going to cut it. That's an average answer and you will get average marks. Next slide, please. So there's going to be a lot of overlap between finance, especially in the objective portion, and the economic portion. So no matter what you do there, but the data points, right? Initiatives by regulators, all those will be common. And you should try to, again, make sure that you're categorizing those announcements and also placing them in an order of importance. It's not that every announcement has the same level of importance. You should look at what the objective is, right? When we look at RBI broadly, and this is something that you should actually go back and listen to the RBI governor speak yesterday in terms of what the objectives of RBI are, right? Price stability, moderate inflation while supporting growth, right? So now to carry out this function, what are the right what are the departments, what are the functions that the RBI undertakes, right, for all of this, which means that there's a supervision department, there's regulation department. Okay. So what are they doing in order to ensure that financial stability is maintained? Okay. Next. There's also a department of financial inclusion. Okay. What are they trying to do? There's also something to do with Forex, right? Why is that there, right? You hear a lot about Forex reserves being maintained by RBI, right? You hear a lot about rupees volatility. It's depreciating, it's appreciating, right? So those are ways in which the RBI carries out its work. Okay. So tied back everything to, okay, what is the objective? Now, which are the departments? What are the initiatives? That way. What is they're trying to address an issue, right? It's not just that people are doing everything for the sake of it. There's an issue. We have to go and try and remedy it. What is the remedy? That is what will come in the newspaper. You have to try and figure that out. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so for the entire descriptive section, and remember that the descriptive section counts a lot more than objective section, purely because the variation in scores that candidates get is going to be a lot higher, right? A poor answer can mean you get just 2 out of 10. Good answer can mean you get 7 or 8 out of 10, right? And an average answer can just mean 4, right? So, which is why don't neglect this section and don't wait for phase 1 to end before you start this, okay? Start getting into the habit of answer writing today itself, okay? Which means that you have to start typing answers. You have to get a structure in place. You need to have the right examples. You need to use the right kind of terminology. And then you should also get someone to give you feedback, right? So that you know what is missing in your answer today and how you can incorporate those elements. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, similar to ESI, what we should do is follow a methodical approach. I've given you a sense of how to do that. First is the conceptual understanding. Second is correlating with any recent developments from current affairs. Now making coherent notes on all of these. Then using that in order to write answers, both objective and subjective, taking mock tests, revising. Next slide, please. Okay, so next 6 months, this is a rough plan. Now, again, I've also seen some questions in the chat box on, is there a timetable? So here is what I will suggest. Go to the next slide. After this session, reach out to the Oliveboard team. They'll help you with a detailed timetable. So have the overall timetable, 6 months, break it down into monthly, break it down into weekly, then break it down into daily, right? You can amend this as you deem fit. That's okay. But no matter what you do, make sure you have a check-in once in 2 weeks, either with the Oliveboard team or with your family or friends, whoever can help you stay up to date and track your progress, right? Next slide, please. Oliveboard offers a complete course for RBI 2025. So make sure that you evaluate that. And if you find it interesting enough, useful enough, then you enroll for that. This will cover both phase 1 and phase 2. So this will be comprehensive and one-stop shop for all your needs for RBI Grade B. It will include live classes for phase 1, phase 2, for all the current affairs sections, detailed notes, recorded videos. The portal has multiple mock tests, not just at the overall level, but also for each section, for each topic. So you can gain sufficient practice by using that portal as well. Right? And as we discussed, there's a specific batch for general awareness to help you not just with RBI, but all other regulatory exams as well. You can enroll for that. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're done. If you have any questions, I'll take them up. I answered a few during the webinar, but if there's something else, then we can take them up as well. Just give me a moment while I go through this. But if anyone has questions that have not been either posted on the chat box or have not been answered, you can unmute yourself and ask now. Okay, which newspaper should be best? I think we've covered that. Proper strategy to read newspaper. Yeah, I think that I've answered. It feels boring and hard to understand. That is true. So here, what I'll suggest is in the beginning, as I said, just stick to the editorial portion. In editorial, it's because it's usually 150, 200 words. You should be able to complete in 2-3 minutes. Any term that you don't understand, underline and now Google that, right? Once you start understanding the topics, that's how you'll be able to relate to them better, right? Also have, as I said, a thorough awareness of the syllabus. So you will spend time on it only if it is relevant, right? If you realize that it is important for the exam, then I'm sure you won't find it boring. Sanjana, you had a question. I see your hand is raised. Can you please go ahead, right? State what you wanted to ask.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
First thing first, I feel really obliged to meet you and to talk to you. So actually, I had a question. Actually, I'm a working aspirant and I work in a bank, so it is very hectic. And when I used to come back from my office, I used to get drained out. But in the morning, I used to study. So at that time, currently, I was planning to start GA from January only, and I managed to grasp it after I think 20th of January. But still, sir, I have a doubt that will it be sufficient if I'm currently reading Affairs Cloud. So will that site be sufficient, or am I supposed to do something else as well?
No, I think it's sufficient. You've started with January, so that is okay, right? Your first objective should be that you don't fall behind, right? As long as you are progressing at this pace, right? And you do Jan, Feb, March, all of that, right? Wherever you are able to get some spare time, that's when you can go back to December,
Hello.
right? But I think December to June should be enough, right? So that's probably the only thing that's remaining, but you can stick to the source that you are reading currently. There's no issue with that. Make sure you take tests on a frequent basis, whether it's fortnightly, whether it's monthly, right, from Oliveboard or from other places that you get an avenue to.
Sir, also there's a question that for the month of January, I haven't grasped it that well, but I'm trying to do it really very well from February. Will it be
Okay,
sufficient?
that's okay, right? The first thing that you should do is get into that rhythm where you are able to do at a comfortable pace and you are able to do it regularly, right? If there are topics that you feel you don't understand, then that's where Oliveboard has these right current affairs classes. You can tune into that. You can listen to that depending on your availability and when you get free from work, all of that. The other thing I will suggest for those who are working and who have that time crunch is when you are revising, try to record it, right, yourselves. You can use an audio recorder. So whenever you're commuting to the office or you get a break in the office, you can listen to your own voice and you can recap your notes. That will help in improving your retention.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so Afsana has a question on from where to evaluate our answers. That's a good question. So if you're doing the objective bit, then you can analyze on the portal itself the right answer, the explanation, all of that will be present. If it's a descriptive question, then if it's a descriptive question that you are attempting offline on the portal, right? You can reach out to the Oliveboard team. You can send them your answers, and they will come back and give the feedback. Right. Once you enroll in their course, they'll be able to assist you with those. Right. Satvik has a question on books for Phase 2 ESI and FM. So Satvik, as I said, it's. I don't necessarily think you should go through the books because they are quite vast. You can probably refer to Oliveboard material that should be enough. The RBI's notification should also contain, I think, the suggested books, but otherwise, it's just organizational behavior. You have Robbins, right? Finance. You have Prasanna Chandra. You have somebody else, but these are all. The issue is these are all books for a particular curriculum where you read over 2 years or 3 years, right? This is not meant for a competitive exam that you prepare for 6 months or in a year. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend them. Some others like Indian Economy by Ramesh Singh. Yeah, I think those are more oriented for competitive exams. Sure, you can go through that. But otherwise, I think Oliveboard material should be enough for you to clear the exam. I hope I've answered your question. There's another one, last one. Smritimai says, okay, searching hard words on Google, how to make myself consistent, how to stay motivated throughout preparation. That's an excellent question, in fact, right? And that's something that happens to all of us given the long period for preparation and multiple phases that we have. So I want to tell you this, that, first thing I said right in the beginning, that this is a test of consistency. This is not a test of excellence, right? Which means that, like you've seen how we prescribe that you divide your time between phase 1, phase 2, divide your time between something that, where you get that speed, you get accuracy, you get that analytical rigor, which blend it with something which gives you a theoretical understanding. So at any point in time on a particular day, as I said, we are dedicating a 2-hour or 3-hour slot, right? And we don't feel motivated. We don't feel like studying. Go to Oliveboard portal, take a test, right? Start taking a test, objective, subjective, anything, right? Doesn't matter. Take a test, right? So while I said in this order that there's time for study, there's time for revision, then there's time for practice. On any day that you don't feel like studying, you're not well, you're busy with something, you don't have enough time, for whatever reason, you're not able to commit to the schedule, do the reverse. Take a test first, okay? Half an hour objective test, that's good enough. Analyze for half an hour. You still have time after that, or you still have some energy left, go and revise something, right? So that's the way to go about it. And the other way you can feel motivated, you can stay motivated, have that energy throughout every single day, is that you break up, right, these large chunks of, whether it's syllabus, whether it's a test, any of that, into smaller portions, right? So management as a whole, I've kept saying it's quite vast. Finance is vast. Economics is vast. That should not mean we get despaired, right? Okay, management has, as I said, right, there are about 6 topics. Okay, how do I break it down into subtopics? Management theories. Okay, but there are 10 theories. Okay, let's just start with Taylor. What did Taylor say? Okay, 4 principles, scientific management. Am I clear on that? So count those small wins, and that will help you build a system where now you are motivated to do a little more, right? Even in this 3-hour window that I'm suggesting, it's not practical to just sit for 3 hours, focus on one thing, right? So your first goal should be that, can I focus on something for half an hour, right? If I'm reading the newspaper, right? Let's just assume nothing else, read the newspaper. Can I read one article without distraction? 15 minutes is what it takes. I'll spend 15 minutes. Okay, I've done that. Can I now summarize it in about 5 minutes? 20 minutes, I'm done. Second, right? Now I'll move to the second article, right? So, but again, I've dedicated 1 hour, 40 minutes. I've read 2 articles. I have a good understanding. I'll move on to the next one. So at any point in time, try to see that your attention is undivided for a period of at least 20 minutes. Make it into blocks of 20 minutes or half an hour, about 4 blocks in a day. You're through. Okay. So I hope that answers your question. I'm sure it's not just for you. Almost everybody has the same question, right? Then, yeah. So I think we are over time anyway. So let's look at what we have as giveaway today, right? Next slide, please. So we're going to send the detailed PDF on the timetable, right? It's already the links are pasted here. So this is the giveaway. Along with that, there's another one on last 5 years, previous year question paper. This is extremely useful for you to understand what the RBI intends to evaluate or check when they ask questions in the exam, both for phase 1, phase 2. Please remember that it's not that random as you think about it, or others make you feel that, okay, there is some obscure scheme, I don't know about it. Yes, it's a competitive exam and there could be some elimination at play, but broadly, it's about something that is in the news for a reason. Instead of asking you just about that scheme which everybody knows about, they're asking you about something that's related, something that was launched 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because as I said, policy making is always in a continuum, right? It's not about start-stop. There's something in place, you try to improve it, you try to get lessons from it, and then you try to make it better the next time, right? So have that mindset, when you appear for the exam and when you join the service as well, right? That is critical. That you are here to go and make a change, and therefore you don't look at, just problems, but you also look for solutions. You understand what the shortcomings are, but you are also able to propose solutions. And when the need comes, you are able to execute as well, right? So I hope this was useful for you. And we've given a fair sense of what the timelines are going to be. If you're still sitting on the fence and you're not sure when to begin, then I think this is the moment to decide. This is an exam that may not require years together, but you still need at least about 6 months. So if you begin now, you'll have a fair shot at it, but make sure you do this sincerely. As I said, there is no point in drawing up a timetable which has 8 hours of studying and you end up doing just 2 hours of it. While it's an exam which is extensive in preparation, it still doesn't require 8 hours. If you can do 3 hours consistently, I'm sure you'll be able to cover everything sufficiently and you have a fair shot of getting selected. Thank you.